All right, y'all, rewind with me for a sec. Last year, Israel's defense minister announced a plan for a humanitarian city in Gaza. It had two former Israeli prime ministers coming out calling it a concentration camp. No, I'm not being dramatic. Yes, I will show you the receipts. Well, guess what's back? New name, new sponsor, but same exact coordinates. This time, it's not the Israeli Defense Ministry leading it. It's actually an organization that Trump created and chairs called the Board of Peace. They're getting ready, literally, to move Palestinians into these controlled shelters, totally safe, totally voluntary, and most importantly, free from Hamas. Meanwhile, Israel's still bombing Gaza during a ceasefire that's supposedly still active. And then because we're gonna do a full tour, and I guess I decided we're gonna have a bad day, we are going to end on Lebanon, where Israel just set off one of the largest single explosions in modern warfare in an actual village. And then Bibi going on Fox News and saying, oh, but Lebanese Christian villages are begging to be a part of Israel. Yeah, let's get into it. All right, y'all, quick trip down memory lane. It's February 2025. Trump stands next to Netanyahu at the White House and says that the US is going to take over Gaza, relocate the entire Palestinian population, turn the strip into what he called the Riviera of the Middle East. You might remember all this, but I'm gonna play you the clip anyways, just so you can get the full effect, and because this is where it all begins.
The US will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out, create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for the people of the area. Do a real job, do something different. Just can't go back. If you go back, it's going to end up the same way it has for 100 years. We have an opportunity to do something that could be phenomenal. And I don't want to be cute. I don't want to be a wise guy, but the Riviera of the Middle East, this could be something.
So that was the first announcement of the plan. And then 5 months later, Israel's defense minister Katz enters the chat. July 2025, Katz announces the actual mechanism to make this vision real, build what's called a humanitarian city on the ruins of Rafah, a city in southern Gaza. It sits right on the border of Egypt, but is actually known as the most demolished part of Gaza, where 89% of the buildings are partially or completely destroyed. I mean, I look at the photos and I think 100% of the buildings are partially or completely gone, but what do I know, right? I'm not there. So we're gonna stick to the documented number, which is 89%. Anyways, either way, a good clean slate that was literally bombed and destroyed to build on. The OG plan was to house about 600,000 already displaced Palestinians first, then expand it to hold all of Gaza. That's 2.2 million people, reported numbers. The only catch is once you're in said humanitarian city, you can't leave unless you're leaving the country, then it's okay. Voluntary immigration is what they called it. I guess a cute term for get out and don't come back. Katz said international forces would run it, which nobody said which or what international forces, like no countries were named, no troops confirmed. I guess it was just a phrase, like a vibe, something they were saying. So it sounds official, but you're not really committing to anything. Anyway, that was the plan on paper, but then actual lawyers got involved. The Wall Street Journal reported that the IDF's own military lawyers told the chief of staff this would be illegal. More specifically, if people were coerced in and then blocked from leaving. Then 16 Israeli law professors sent an open letter warning that this could be a war crime and a crime against humanity. And then my favorite part, 2 former Israeli prime ministers just came out and said it plainly. We had Ehud Olmert, he said, it is a concentration camp. I am sorry. Yair Lapid said, I don't prefer to describe a humanitarian city as a concentration camp, but if exiting it is prohibited, then it is a concentration camp. Yeah, but it wasn't just former politicians, okay? We have Amos Goldberg. He's a Jewish Holocaust historian at Hebrew University, reviewed the plan and called it exactly what he studies for a living, ethnic cleansing. So no anti-Semitism here, right? Because we've got a former prime minister calling it a concentration camp, the other one basically agreeing, and then a Jewish Holocaust historian calling it ethnic cleansing. And the response from Katz's office? Oh, they just said, Omar's a convicted felon disgracing Israel. Cool. I mean, you really addressed the concern there. Thanks. Well, Israel decided to keep pushing forward with the plan anyway. So between April and July 2025, the number of demolished buildings in Rafah jumped from about 15,800 to 28,600. That's almost 13,000 more buildings flattened in 3 months. But don't worry, right? No big deal. Just making more room for the humanitarian city. Then by late July, Israeli media reported that the whole thing had been quietly shelved, and not because of the backlash. No. An Israeli senior official told told an Israeli newspaper that leadership was actually at the time banking on this hostage deal that would involve a full Israeli troop withdrawal from southern Gaza. And so at that point, just building a camp there stopped making sense, which leads me to believe, I don't know, just opinion. But I don't know, that kind of tells me that the IDF was probably meant to play a very key role in this camp, you know, if pulling Israeli troops is what killed the plan. So international force is my ass. Now here's where it gets sneaky. January 2026, the beginning of the year, Drop Site News gets their hands on leaked documents. The leaked documents came from a group called the CMCC. That's the Civil Military Coordination Center. Basically, it's the US military operations set up by CENTCOM. That's our US Central Command, the part of the military that actually handles the Middle East. So they created the CMCC in October 2025, right after the Gaza ceasefire kicked in. It's physically located in Israel, a city called Kiryat Gat, so it's not in Gaza. About 200 actual US troops are stationed there, and the Pentagon funds it directly out of the normal defense budget, which if you didn't know, that is our tax dollars. The project inside the leaked docs is called the Gaza First Planned Community. It's a 1 square kilometer zone in Rafah, so the same location as the OG 2025 COTS plan. To get in, they must pass through this checkpoint and then register by giving their biometric data. That's like fingerprints, face scan, that kind of thing. Their IDs then get tied into a system run by COGAT. That's an Israeli military office that's controlled Palestinian permits and movement in the West Bank since 1967. It's had some control or some presence in Gaza, but nothing like this, like, you know, on this capacity of like full IDs, full permits, not since before Hamas took over in 2007. So this camp kind of brings that back. Same occupation playbook, just returning to Gaza after almost 20 years. The plan also proposes replacing Gaza's cash money with something called electronic shekel wallets. Their stated reason is to stop money from reaching, quote, Hamas financial channels. But let me translate that for you. To track every single dollar that touches a Palestinian hand in that zone. A former senior UN official, Jonathan Whitall, reviewed this and called it, quote, the next phase in the weaponization of aid. He also said this Rafah site would become, quote, the blueprint for how Israeli control could be deepened and rolled out further. Which means, if he is to be correct, and if this site works the way I think that they want it to, checkpoints, biometric IDs, digital currency, COGAT tracking, it doesn't stay a one-off, okay? It gets copied to more zones, to more parts of Gaza. So despite all these reports you might be seeing floating around calling this a pilot program, it's a template. It's the beginning, allegedly. Now, when Drop Site News asked CENTCOM to explain literally any of this, they responded with basically, don't ask us, ask the White House. And then the White House basically said, don't ask us, ask the State Department. Not sure why, but I kind of think that tells us something in itself. Now, present day, July 2026, Israel Hayom, that's a pro-Netanyahu paper, just worth noting, they report that the plan is moving forward, for real this time. Except now, it's got a new sponsor, Trump's Board of Peace. Quick background on the board, it was formally created January 22nd, 2026 at the World Economic Forum in Davos. 27 countries signed on, and Trump is the chairman. Its whole job is overseeing Gaza's rebuilding, governance, and on paper, the ceasefire itself. The first site for the project is Tel Sultan. That's a neighborhood inside Rafah, so the exact same location we've been talking about, but this isn't just talk anymore, okay? In late June, the board posted actual photos. Let me show you. Tactical vehicles physically arriving at a staging base near the Gaza border, so it's happening. A group called the ISF, it stands for International Civilization Force, will be running security, which is apparently this neutral force made up of troops pledged by countries like Indonesia, Morocco, Albania, Kazakhstan, Kosovo. And once this zone is actually operating, their written/stated job is to run the checkpoints, controlling who enters, screening for weapons, patrolling the perimeter. They're stationed at Camp Amidai, which, plot twist, is an already existing Israeli military base near the Gaza border. So this neutral international force, I mean, that's literally what the Board of Peace is calling it, I'm not making that up, is operating out of an Israeli base. Okay. Board officials also pledged not to bring concrete into the zone, so the camp will be filled with just tents and caravans. According to them, it is because this is a temporary situation. Worth noting, the original COTS 2025 plan was never described as temporary. Reports at the time said it would take months to build and cost billions. Meanwhile, The Guardian obtained a leaked draft resolution showing the board is seeking legal immunity for its own members, its contractors, everyone I guess they're enlisting to be involved with this project, shielding them from arrest or prosecution in Gaza's own courts. So if anything goes wrong in this zone, or if years, decades later, we're still here, God willing, and people look back and they're like, ooh, that was a concentration camp, nobody running them can ever be prosecuted for for it. Now the board denies this. Okay, a spokesperson told The Guardian, there's no operative resolution or immunity framework. They say personnel will follow applicable law and clear oversight, but they casually didn't explain what that oversight actually is. And 6 separate legal experts who reviewed the leaked draft said the same thing. It is still unclear how anyone would actually be held accountable. The same leaked draft also reportedly grants the board authority to use public property across all of Gaza, not just the camp, all of Gaza free of charge. This would be schools, government buildings, wherever they exist at this point, if they even do exist at this point. And their stated reason is to set up operational bases and logistics centers needed to rebuild the territory and disarm Hamas, aka bullshit. They're stealing land and taking over. But essentially, the plan is to build a zone, staff them with the force operating off an Israeli military base, but calling it neutral, and then make sure no one involved in the planning or operation can be held legally responsible for anything that happens inside, even though officially that's not what this is, right? Because that's not what they're saying that it is, so that's not what's happening. But cool, great, I'm glad we got it cleared up. I'm glad it all makes sense. Now let's talk about the money, okay? So the Board of Peace is actually the main funder behind this camp. Oh wait, sorry. International Peacekeeping Effort, Humanitarian Shelter, my bad. LOL, that's what they're calling it. But who's funding the Board of Peace? Well, at a February donor conference, Trump pledged $10 billion from the US, meaning ultimately taxpayer money. And then other countries like Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Kuwait each pledged at least $1 billion on top of that, but the total pledge number is $17 billion. But pledging isn't the same thing as paying, right? And as of 2 months ago, the Times of Israel reported that only about 1% of that $17 billion had actually been transferred. Why? Oh, no big deal. It's just because a full-on war broke out between the US, Israel, and Iran. You might have heard of it. And at some point, Iran had retaliated and happened to bomb basically every single one of those Gulf countries that just pledged money. Yeah, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Kuwait, real damage, real economic hits. I mean, Qatar lost gas exports, UAE took oil and infrastructure hits. So the vast majority of what was pledged or what they pledged just never showed up in that fund. But here's where it gets weird, okay? There are 2 places this money is supposed to go. 1, the official public World Bank run fund, fully visible to everyone involved. Or 2, a private mechanism through a JP Morgan Chase account. The official World Bank fund for this humanitarian camp has a balance of $0. And the small amount that has been transferred was moved through that private JP Morgan channel, but apparently it's specifically earmarked to cover the salaries for the Palestinian Technocratic Committee, aka the NCAG, not the camp. Where did the 1% of that $17 billion pledge go? I mean, what? That'd be roughly $170 million if we're counting on the full pledge being $17 billion. And yet, nobody knows. I mean, I could not find a clear answer. And your girl looked. Your girl dug. Now, I'm not the best researcher, but I couldn't find an answer. So we just know that the official World Bank Fund has a balance of $0, for this humanitarian camp. And then we know a separate, smaller amount moved through the private channel into the JP Morgan account, specifically earmarked for the NCAG. But even when I looked into that one, the reporting's weird. Like apparently that doesn't even add up to the full 1%. So there's a real gap here on so many levels. I mean, money that supposedly moved and then nobody's publicly tracking it. And yet the camp is still in production. Who's funding it? From what's documented, I don't know, right? I can't say. But from the pattern I think we've all been witnessing for, I don't know, whenever you took that black pill, probably us. Opinion, YouTube. But if you're confused, that's fine because so am I. But okay, back to the NCAG. So quick reminder of what this group is and why they matter. The NCAG is the Palestinian Technocratic Committee that's supposed to eventually replace Hamas and run Gaza's day-to-day government. I mean, this is the same group that is specifically written in the ceasefire agreement, the 2025 October Gaza ceasefire agreement, as the alternative to Hamas rule. Well, just this week, Hamas made a really big move involving them. I know, breaking news. They announced they're dissolving their own government, 20 years of running Gaza, just done, and handing it over to the NCAG. Why now? Well, analysts think Hamas is trying to get ahead of something, possibly this camp, or more specifically, what this camp might eventually turn into. New Rafah. New Rafah is a term that Israeli officials use for limiting any future Palestinian government to one small controlled area. Technically, this camp could be seen as phase 1 of New Rafah. Same land, same project, just at its earliest stage. More on that in a second. But the theory that Al Jazeera reported was that if there's no legitimate Palestinian government to hand power to, that becomes part of Israel's justification for confining everyone to a small zone. So Hamas handing this power to the NCAG is essentially them just trying to take away that justification. Well, Israel actually immediately called the whole move a trick and compared it to Hezbollah and Lebanon, and that might be true. I don't know. I'm not a defender of Hamas, but I want to talk about what New Rafah actually is because y'all, it always comes back to my fave. my fave, Jared Kushner. So back in January, at the same Davos event where the Board of Peace, officially launched, WEF, Jared Kushner personally unveiled the full picture. He gave a presentation with a cute little slideshow. Let me show you.
Rafah will start with. This will show a lot of workforce housing. We think this could be done in 2-3 years. We've already started removing the rubble and doing some of the demolition. And then New Gaza. It could be a hope, it could be a destination, have a lot of industry, and really be a place that the people there can thrive, have great employment. Once this starts going, we think there should be 100% full employment and opportunity for everybody there. And we have a lot of data on what can be, but we think that this really gives the Gazan people an opportunity to live their aspirations. But it all starts with security, and it all starts with governance.
Now, don't get it twisted. This is real estate business on the backs of dead Palestinians. But let me break it down for you, okay? Because he did go through that quickly, and I didn't even play you the full clip. So the new Rafah plan, which, same location we've been talking about in this whole video, is over 100,000 housing units, schools, and hospitals. But that's just phase one, okay? The bigger picture was the next slide. They're calling it New Gaza. It includes turning 70% of the entire coastline into what they call the Gaza Riviera. Remember the first video I showed you of Trump? He said the Riviera of the Middle East.
The Riviera of the Middle East.
Same thing, okay? This is literally what that turned into a year later with actual names and numbers attached. But the plan is up to 180 luxury towers, hotels, so they're thinking tourism, data centers, because you can't build a new city without those damn data centers. Total cost for all of it, Jared says it later in the presentation, over $112 billion in just the first decade. But he also adds that New Rafah alone could be built in just 2 to 3 years. Totally doable. Trump actually backed up his son-in-law. This is what he said. Take a listen.
But I said that, this is a great location. It all begins, I'm a real estate person at heart, and it's all about location. And I said, look at this location on the sea. Look at this beautiful piece of property, what it could be for so many people. It'll be so great. People that are living so poorly are going to be living so well. But it all began with the location. That's the vision. They look out on the waters, and very few places are like it.
And the Palestinians? Irrelevant. Not consulted, no property rights addressed, no homes, all right, no plan for where they're gonna stay during those 2 to 3 years of construction if this were to happen. I mean, it can't be those cute little tents they're setting up right now because that's the same exact location they're gonna build upon. But who knows, right? Who cares? Whatever. By the way, I should also add that Jared made it clear in his presentation that none of this happens, none of it, unless Hamas fully disarms first. His reasoning, without security, nobody's going to make investments, nobody's going to come build here. But all in all, there are a lot of theories and speculation regarding this camp. Many are calling it a concentration camp. And I think from what I've presented, you can understand why people are coming to that conclusion. But this right here, this whole thing, that Trump and Jared and all these investors want to get in on, profiting off of this stolen land and dead Palestinians, is the only reason I believe this just might be temporary. Now, while all this is going on, and despite the ceasefire that's been in place since October 2025, Israel is still bombing Gaza. I know you're shocked. You're so surprised. Breaking news. I just broke the news. Here's what's been reported since the ceasefire started, and just bear with me, it's a lot of numbers, okay? Israeli forces have killed over 1,070 Palestinians since the ceasefire took effect. Almost 250 of them are children, over 100 women, dozens of elderly people, another 3,463 wounded. Reported numbers, okay, we will never really know. Only God knows. In that same window, over 1,570 airstrikes and shelling attacks, almost 1,400 live fire attacks, 146 military incursions, nearly 400 home demolitions, again, all during a ceasefire. Children, women, and elderly people made up almost 37% of everyone killed since the ceasefire started, and that same group makes up almost half of everyone wounded. And the Board of Peace, the same organization that's supposed to be overseeing this 2025 ceasefire agreement, has not publicly condemned a single one of these attacks, not one. And let me show you what this actually looks like so it's not just numbers, okay? So this is Israel blowing up residential buildings in Khan Yunis. This is a little boy named Ahmed. He was filling water containers, and then an Israeli quadcopter drone dropped a bomb on him. This is a little girl named Siwar. She was sheltering in a tent with her mother in Khan Yunis, so same area. They dropped a bomb on that tent and they both died. And then there is Mohammed Fawaz al-Wahidi. He's the director of public relations for Egypt's own relief committee in Gaza. This is the same group that's been distributing food and housing to displaced families in camps that they've set up themselves. He was also the one setting up up those public screens across Gaza shelters so that families could watch the World Cup, I guess just to sprinkle a little bit of joy in the midst of all this. Well, he was killed recently in a strike on a civilian vehicle about an hour before Egypt's own match, after he set up the screen for the Palestinians to watch that match. 2 others died with him, including a child. The Israeli military said that he wasn't the target. They say that they were aiming for a Hamas militant group nearby. But this isn't the first time that Israel's killed people from that specific relief group. Back in January, a drone strike hit a vehicle carrying committee workers who were filming a new displacement camp. 5 people died, including 3 journalists. Then there's Dr. Hussam Abu Safia. He was the director of Kamal Adwan Hospital in northern Gaza. He led that hospital through more than 80 days of siege and bombardment before Israeli forces raided it on December 27, 2024 and shut it down. That morning, staff and patients were ordered out into the courtyard. Dozens of medical workers were detained, and then the critically ill patients were loaded onto trucks and sent to like some other barely functioning hospital. That's the story, at least. Not sure if I believe it. And then the building itself, where the hospital, was set on fire. This is the footage of Dr. Hussam after all this went down, walking through the rubble in his white coat towards an Israeli armored vehicle. The story is he shook a soldier's hand, told them there was no one left inside, and then he was taken. He's been held ever since, over 18 months, no charges, no trial, under this law that lets Israel detain people indefinitely based on evidence they don't have to show to anyone. But we finally got an update this June 2026. His family saw proof he was still alive for the first time, like in over a year. He appeared by video link at his Supreme Court hearing, but he's shackled, and then there's visible marks on his arms, and his appeal was rejected. Since then, it's gotten worse. His lawyer says that he was recently beaten with a hammer and beaten with like a metal baton every day in and out of consciousness. He actually told his lawyer, "This is the last time you will see me. They brought me here to kill me. I don't see myself surviving." Now, Israel disputes who he is. They say he holds rank in Hamas's military medical services, but no charges have ever been filed, and then his staff and Gaza's health ministry deny those claims. I don't know, but he's at least one of 14 Gaza doctors being held by Israel in the exact same way. Just another detail to add a little bit more to the picture. He kept running that hospital even after his own son was killed in an Israeli strike. And right before he was taken, he said, "We will not leave for as long as there are humanitarian services to be provided to our people." Meanwhile, Israel still holds about 34 square kilometers of Gaza beyond the line it agreed to withdraw to under the ceasefire. No big deal. It's blocking repairs to electricity, water, sewage, blocking the heavy machinery needed to rebuild anything. Barely a third of the food and supplies Israel agreed to let in has actually gotten in, and the fuel's even worse. Only about 15% of what was promised is showing up. And then there's the Rafah crossing. So this is the only way in or out of Gaza that doesn't go through Israel. It actually goes into Egypt instead, and it's barely functioning. There are about 150 hospitals across Egypt that are ready and waiting to take patients from Gaza. So the issue here isn't capacity, it's actually getting there, which would require the Rafah crossing. So Egypt and the EU basically, or technically, run it, but Israel still has to approve every single person who crosses, and they cap it. So only about 150 people a day are allowed to leave, and only 50 are allowed back in. Israel has also shut the whole thing down completely multiple times since the ceasefire started, completely closed it down, not sure why, maybe just for shits and giggles. And then the people who do make it through, there's multiple stories and reports that they've been interrogated for hours or blindfolded, handcuffed, a lot of drama with this Rafah crossing. I'm just kind of summing it up for you. It's reported that at the rate Israel's letting people through right now, it'd take over a year just to clear the current backlog. And that's like a good version of the math, right? That's assuming that Israel is letting the max number out every single day. And I mean, as you probably gathered, that's not what's happening. At least 1,268 patients have already died just from waiting. One of them was a 2-year-old boy named Nidal. He waited 14 months for approval to leave for treatment, and then he died before it ever came through. His mother, Iman Hamdouna, she told Al Jazeera plainly, "Israel closed the crossings and killed my son." So this is just a little bit of what's actually happening on the ground, you know, tip of the iceberg. This is just a bit of what I read up on this week. It's been a very hard week, very hard week. And then it's just also knowing that this is just what we have access to, you know, what's been reported. Again, we will never really know, but all during a ceasefire that's apparently still active. And then there's Lebanon, because as many of us who have been paying attention know, it is not just Gaza where this is happening. Late June 2026, a village called Majd al-Zun, it's in southern Lebanon. Israel detonates what they say was a 200-meter Hezbollah tunnel network, 25 meters underground. Experts say this is one of the largest single warhead explosions in modern military history. Homes were leveled in seconds. This happened actually 2 days after Israel and Lebanon signed that US brokered agreement, you know, one step towards peace. Yeah, this looks peaceful. Then there's Nabatea El Fakwa, and y'all, I apologize if I'm saying these cities or names incorrectly. I looked up the pronunciation for each one, but you know, just give a girl some grace, okay? But it's another southern Lebanese town hit not once, but repeatedly. But you know, it's not just isolated to these two places. In a single 7-hour window recently, Israeli forces carried out at least 18 separate attacks across southern Lebanon, 6 airstrikes, 6 drone strikes, 4 artillery attacks, 2 sound bombs, all concentrated around Nabatea and Beit Jabil. But honestly, the reporting surrounding what's going on in Lebanon right now is really confusing. I think because it's so constant and it's happening in cities that are near each other, it's just, for someone who was trying to like organize this, very, very confusing. But the impression I got was that all of southern Lebanon is just getting wrecked. And then the cherry on top, Netanyahu, he goes on Fox News and he says this. Take a listen.
Friends, and I have to tell you, we also take care of our friends, especially the Christians in the Middle East. The Christian villages in Lebanon, some of them have actually asked to be annexed to Israel because we protect them against the Hezbollah fanatics who want to kill them. And we do the same things with Christians everywhere.
Well, you're
protect
leading
the Christians in the Middle East.
I mean, look at that face. Look at it. Yeah, that looks like a good guy. Oh, okay. Anyways, so here's where we land. In Gaza, we have a plan. 2 former Israeli prime ministers came out and called a concentration camp, quietly rebuilt with biometric IDs and digital wallets, rebranded as this international peacekeeping effort run by a body that's never once condemned the more than 1,000 people killed since the ceasefire it's supposed to be overseeing. All of it ultimately the groundwork for a $112 billion luxury capital that the Palestinians were never asked about, all while the actual bombs keep landing on actual homes this week. And then in Lebanon, we have whole villages leveled under the banner of demolishing tunnels. The same towns hit over and over for months. A prime minister casually floating annexation on national television. Different country, same shit, but who cares? Who cares? You know, like I said, this was a hard week for me. Every spare minute I was researching, reading up, watching too much footage, I think, looking at too many pictures. Yeah, it was not a good week. I started wondering why even bother, because nobody really cares. Anyway, so I was in the thick of it, right? Researching, crying, praying, doubting. And then I came across this footage and I was humbled. I was then humbled. Let me just show you. Yeah, so that is Gaza. This past week, they're just watching or celebrating Egypt's win in the World Cup hours after the man who set it up for them was killed. I don't know how to explain it. I think it was just what I needed to see. Well, it humbled me. It reminded me all that I have to be grateful for. You know, my circumstances, God's provision, His mercy, His grace. And I guess it reminded me that, you know, life goes on and we do what we feel the Lord is calling us to, or some of us do what we feel the Lord is calling us to do, and this is what I feel like He's telling me to do right now. I really do feel like every video I upload is Spirit-led, and so it reminded me, I guess, where my focus should be, which is on Him and not man's opinion or approval. I feel like He wants me to talk about this, so this is what I have, all right? I didn't make any of this up. I just read the documents, watched the footage, and this is what I have to show you. If any of this made you as angry as it made me, then good. Do something with that. Talk about it, share it, make someone uncomfortable. Don't just look away because it's easier, face it. And I'm talking to myself here too. And if you love Jesus, if you love the Lord as much as I do, then take it to Him. Because prayer is our most powerful weapon, and please use it. Again, I'm talking to myself as well. But anyways, if you made it this far, if you're still here watching, then I really do appreciate that. Thank you. I know this wasn't one of my lighter videos. This wasn't like, you know, a vibe, the best time, but yeah, I appreciate it. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Bye, y'all.